What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another video. So as you guys probably know, ranked mode actually reset a couple of days ago, and now everyone is on that grind back to Unreal. And in today's video, what I'm going to be doing is telling you guys exactly how to rank up super fast and reach Unreal rank in Fortnite Chapter 4 Season 3. I'll basically be covering all the best tips and tricks I can give you guys when it comes to ranking up fast, playing consistent, and just being a better player overall. Before we get into it, be sure to drop a like on the video if it helps you out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and want to see more. We're on that road to 200,000. We're getting really close, so it's always appreciated. And of course, guys, if you want to show some extra support, it's always appreciated if you could use code Teckoh in the item shop. It's 100% free for you. It only takes a couple seconds to type in, and it seriously does help me out a bunch. As always, a giant thank you to everyone who uses it. But with all that said, we've got a lot to cover, so let's get into today's video. So one of the biggest issues that people face when they're trying to rank up is their early game. Depending on your rank and depending on your individual circumstances, you may lose more or less percentage than someone else, but it's definitely a major hit to your progress. I've seen people die off spawn and lose typically around 20%, but I've seen up to 40. It's actually pretty crazy. Surviving off spawn is definitely one of the most important things you can do to rank up consistently. My biggest tip for early game is going to be to land at a quiet to moderate spot. In my opinion, gone are the days where you would hot drop into Anvil Square or something like that, even though it doesn't exist anymore, just as an example, and W key until your heart's content. Unless you specifically don't care about ranking up, or unless you're crazy enough to survive consistently doing something like that, then it's probably not the best idea. Typically, you're really not going to want to W key off spawn because it's just way too risky. For probably about 90% of us, the best move is to land at a semi-quiet spot, get some loot, HP, and materials, make it to mid-game, and start fighting there. One thing that really has a big impact on early game is definitely the fact that there's no siphon anymore. Previously, W keying in early game was actually a pretty good idea because you'd get 50 of each material, you'd get some HP, and of course you'd get the loot of the person you killed. So it would be super common to see people dropping like upwards of even like 10 kills only off spawn. Nowadays, that's not really possible. You can't really do that anymore, simply because you're going to get third-partied if you're at a hot spot, and you're not going to have loot, you're not going to have HP or materials. Personally, I'm still really banking on them adding siphon back to ranked mode. I can kind of understand where they were coming from with making it less aggressive, but I feel like it was just a dumb change and that it's not really helping. But I guess that's kind of just my rant about no siphon. Having no siphon is definitely one of the biggest reasons you don't want to W key off spawn. As well as that, a really important tip for team modes is that if you're playing a team mode like duos or squads, try to play as close as possible with your team. This allows you to share your heals, which is much more important now without siphon. You can also go for team plays, and you just won't get caught up in bad situations as much. I'm sure you guys can relate to this. You're playing a squads match, you're in a fight, and all of a sudden 2 or 3 of the people from the other team are only on you. You get killed, and then they just slowly work their way through the rest of the team. It's a very common situation, and you won't get caught with that as much if you play close. Although it's great if you can get this stuff, don't really worry about the loot vaults or even, I guess, the island, unless you're either in squads or unless you feel confident enough fighting to get it. The loot is absolutely fantastic, don't get me wrong, but it's not worth dying off spawn or early into mid game trying to get it, even though it may have been worth it back when we had arena. That's just something I wanted to mention because it is a pretty common issue. Moving on from that though, and getting into our next tip, and this one is all about the ranked quests. One pretty important feature that was added with ranked is the ranked quests, and these are basically little tasks that you're given at the start of the game, and they're definitely something you're going to want to give some thought to. Early in your game, you're going to see your ranked quest pop up near the top left of your screen, and from what I've seen, these quests are actually reasonably easy, but they do give a lot of points towards ranking up. Like, I've seen someone get a totally mediocre game, but because they got their ranked quest, they ranked up like 40% or something like that. It actually is pretty powerful, and usually these are very simple things like deal 100 damage with shotguns, eliminate someone with an SMG, etc. It's stuff that you can pretty easily get if you focus on it. So although it's a pretty simple tip, I do find that this helps a lot with ranking up, so if it's a reasonable quest, then definitely have a crack at it. Especially over time, if you're consistent with these, it can be a huge help to your rank. Moving on from that, and one of the most important factors when it comes to ranked play is your aggression level. If you play too aggressive, you're much more likely to die in a fight, but you play too passive and you're not going to get enough loot to compete in endgame. So really, there's going to be a middle ground there that you want to reach, and it's going to be different for every person. The best level of aggression is going to depend on a couple of factors: the type of loot, HP, and materials you have after early game, your skill level and confidence in fights, and of course your rotation path, because if you're way out of zone, then you're going to want to focus on that. You're going to want to modify your strategy based on these things, but my general recommendation is to focus on a quiet to moderate off spawn, as we discussed earlier, and then in mid game only really go for kills if they're in a quiet location or if you're forced into them. Sometimes you'll simply get W keyed and you have to fight it, but if it's up to you, then focus on playing a moderate playstyle, secure those placement points, as well as maybe a couple of kills if it's reasonable to get them. The rule I generally go by is to only push fights when you have something to gain. If you're in a busy area of zone where you're likely to get third party, then you probably won't want to do it, but if you're in a quiet area, you have the loot, HP, and materials to fight, and you feel confident winning that fight, then obviously go for it. And then when it comes to endgame, just play it out like normal. If you have enough stuff, then this is definitely the time to frag out, especially on players who are falling behind on rotations or don't seem to have materials or HP. But really, when it comes down to it, modify your aggression based on the factors in your game, and focus more on making the right calls for your situation than following some exact playstyle template, because frankly, every match is going to be different. One match you may have fantastic loot, fantastic materials, fantastic HP, you're absolutely stacked and you're running through the lobby. And another match you might be total shambles, have to loot random locations, and you might not get a single kill until endgame. Overall, the best way to play is going to depend on your situation. One last note I want to mention is that you can also modify your aggression based on your team. If you know you have a squad of absolutely crazy players who can wipe out most fights, then you might make the most progress simply by landing hot and W keying. If you die off spawn like 10% of the time and the other 90% of the time you survive off spawn with a bunch of kills, then it's definitely worth it. The problem is when you start surviving off spawn 50% of the time and you keep losing points because you die off spawn. I don't want it to seem like I'm totally against pushing a lot of fights, because I do play that strategy personally, but it's really just going to come down to what works best for you, and you're going to want to figure that out on your own. One other question I want to answer is a pretty common one, which is which mode is the best to play? In my first ranked video, which I think was about a month ago, my answer to that question was either solos or duos depending on your preference, because I felt that squads were a bit too chaotic and really weren't as skill based, especially consider the loot pool from last season where we had all these Star Wars items, the ODM gear that could just smash through your builds, and tons of explosives and stuff like that, and just stuff that wasn't skill based at all, and that if 4 people had stuff you could just get destroyed. Nowadays we don't have that anymore, and the meta is a lot more balanced, and honestly my current view is that any game mode works as long as you have good teammates. If you find teammates that you play well with, then duos and squads can be an absolute powerhouse for ranking up, but this is all going to be based on you finding a team that you play well with and perform consistently in your games. If you don't have a solid team, then stick to solos, but otherwise all modes seem to be pretty equal for ranking up right about now. And with that said guys, getting into our last tip for this video, and this is a very simple one but is so important, and this one is to focus on consistency. During the ranked reset, Epic made it a bit harder to break into those top ranks and hit Unreal, and overall I think ranked is slowly becoming more and more polished. The biggest key here is to focus on consistency. Focus on surviving off spawn every game, securing your placement, getting your quest done, and only push for the smart fights. And if you do this on a consistent basis, even if you only drop a couple of kills or a decent placement on most games, doing it game after game after game is going to rank you up so much faster than popping off one game, dying a stupid death 3 games after that, popping off again, dying a couple more deaths, and so on and so on. Your biggest priority should be to play smart, and you should see your rank climb. And by the way, I'm speaking from experience here because this is a mistake I made so much in the past. I tried so hard to drop these 20-25 kill games, and really I got those games sometimes, but I didn't end up ranking up consistently because frankly I was dying so much off spawn that it just wouldn't work. So overall, try to avoid that fate, because it definitely sucks when you get a couple of good games and you lose it all because you die off spawn once. Just focus on being consistent and it should help you out a ton. But with all that said guys, that's gonna wrap it up for today's video on how to reach Unreal rank super fast in Fortnite Chapter 4 Season 3. Overall, we had a lot to cover in this video, but hopefully it made sense. And by following all the tips in this video, you should see some dramatic improvements in your ranking up, and hopefully over time you should be able to consistently work your way up to Unreal rank. If you found the video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more, and of course it's always hugely appreciated if you could use code Teckoh in the item shop. It's 100% free for you. It only takes a couple seconds to type in, and it seriously does help me out a bunch. As always, a giant thank you to everyone who uses it. We actually had a ton of people use it this month, and it seriously does help an absolute ton, so thank you guys so much. Really appreciate the support on all the videos, and I'm going to keep trying to get them out as consistently as possible. And of course guys, let me know down in the comments what you guys want to see next on the channel. I'm reaching that point in the season where I'm kind of like, all right, let's find some video ideas here. We got to try some new stuff out. So if you guys have anything specific you want to see on the channel, then definitely let me know. But with all that said guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.